Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. Alright, on to the stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from MORONIC 2020. You want me to do what I'm told because you are the boss? Okay. I'd been reminded of this incident recently when I happened to run into one of my former bosses. And this is a story of malicious compliance. Many times, I'd mentioned during other conversations with them that I'd previously come from the private sector and was not used to how things were run, even after several years in local government, and definitely that those ways would never, ever fly in private sector, especially when it came to money. I had been tasked with being the liaison for returning money and personal property to people that were either victims or the perpetrators. Laws don't allow us to know which category individuals fell under. But if a judge said, give their property back to them, that's what I did, with the correct paperwork, period. Of course, there were procedures, proper paperwork had to be filled out, and a valid and current state identification or driver's license, a court order, and an evidence voucher was needed. Everything had to match on all of the paperwork, their full name, address, city, and state, and a property receipt from the police department. If they came to me with a receipt that said John Q. Doe, then their identification had to say the same. Not Jack Doe, not JQ Doe, you get it. It was supposed to be a surefire way to make sure that the right person claimed the property. And 99.99% of the time, it was money, US dollars. And our department was entrusted to follow the rules. Well, the supervisor and the department head, let's call them TD and TL, were both in rare form this particular day during our routine morning meeting, when they both had attitudes about everything. It probably had something to do with the fact that they were being applauded for running a tight ship and getting things done. Yeah, right. All they had to do was sign their names to things. The staff did all of the hard work. And yet contradicting everything said between one and the other, and walking around with their chests out like they were God's gifts. And in not so many words, both professing, I'm the boss, I want it done this way or that way. If I say something, that's the way I want it. Do it and don't question me. Okay, I thought, and I've been asked before at other jobs, are you sure? Really sure? Because I was taught to do just that, give you exactly what you want. And usually people end up not liking it. They both were so nasty in their response that I just smiled at my friend and coworker across the table, who shook her head and did a facepalm. Why? Because she knows me. Okay, it's on. I'm going to do it your way, without question, because you two are the boss. At around 11 a.m., I get a call from the security desk that a visitor had arrived with a property receipt, etc., and wanted to know if I would come and collect them to get the process started. Sure, I'll be down in about 10 to 15 minutes, I told them, as I was in the process of counting money and needed to focus. As on any given day, there was around $100,000 in cash on my desk, and I didn't want to put the money back in the safe and start all over. When I finally finished counting the money and went downstairs to collect the visitor was clearly agitated. Was I bothered? Kind of, but I was secure enough knowing that there were 400 or so officers with pew-pews in the building. So I led the visitor up to my office, had them seated, took their information, and began the process. Except 1, the voucher looked old. 2, the name on the voucher didn't match the receipt. 3, the receipt nor the voucher matched the court order. And 4, their ID was expired. Alert! Alert! Giant red flags waving in the breeze. Everything that I'd been taught was screaming at me that this was bad and that it was going to end badly. I made the necessary copies for my records of all the information like always, except this time 2 of everything, and actually circled all of the discrepancies in red marker, and then told the visitor that I needed to get the checkbook from another office. It would take a little while to get the signatures needed, and release of funds requires 2 other signatures. I first went to my immediate supervisor, TL, and explained the situation to her. I showed her every single solitary piece of paperwork, pointed out all of which I'd circled, that the information didn't match on any of the forms in any way at all. She literally did a quick scan and said, "It's okay, do it." I know that I stood there with my mouth opening and closing with no words coming out for a full 2 minutes, shaking my head and in shock before I said, "Wait, did you really look at what I'm showing you? There's something wrong with all of it. I think it's forgery and fraud about to be committed." Her words were, "I said do it," while pushing all of the paperwork across her desk back to me. "Are you sure? Do you want to look at it again? Do you realize that I'm supposed to cut a check for $97,000? I asked. "No, it's fine, do it, so that you can get back to your other work." I then told her that I was really uncomfortable completing the transaction and that I wanted to speak to TD about it. And so I walked across the hall, tapped on TD's door, and asked if we could discuss the transaction. Now mind you, TD is the department head, one of the signatures needed to finalize the paperwork. The other person to sign would be the accounts payable department head. I spread both sets of copies of the papers across his desk, and again explained in detail the situation and what was wrong with all of it. At least he took a few more minutes to pore over the paperwork, unlike TL, and so I thought, okay, he's paying attention. He'll see everything that's wrong with this. He'll make a call downstairs and have a couple of officers up here in no time. Nope, he literally said, "It's all good, do it." TD, it's not all good. Please look at it all again, I pleaded. Now is a good time to tell everyone that I worked for lawyers for 5 years straight out of high school, and one of the best things that I've ever learned was what definitely became my lifelong motto: cover your own butt and don't take the fall for other people. And that mindset has been good to me. Again, I pleaded with TD to look closely at the paperwork. I pointed out all of the discrepancies again: the wrong name, the paper being the wrong color and looking old, the expired state ID, everything. And again, he said, "I said do it." Okay, I thought, this is one of the times when you know for certain that this is going to come back and bite you in the butt. But remember when I said that I worked for lawyers for 5 years in my earlier career? Well, I remembered them always saying, signatures are everything. Now, normally, the only time I would need signatures are when the checks are actually cut. But this time, I was definitely going to take it oh so much further. Back out to the copier I went for one more copy of all the paperwork. First stop was the supervisor, TL. TL, I need your signature to finish this transaction. Sign and date here, 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 and here. Yes, everywhere I'd made a notation in red marker. Thank you. And off I went back to TD to get his signature. Sorry to bother you, TD, but I need your signature and date here, 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 and here. All the while thinking, you two won't be having me accused and arrested for conspiring with a total stranger. With that done, I asked TD one more time, are you sure that you want me to complete this transaction after everything that I've pointed out, cut a check and send the visitor on his way? TD never looked up from what he was reading and said yes. So that's what I did. Completed the steps necessary to cut the $90,000 check and send the visitor on his merry way. 3 weeks later, all hell broke loose. OP, my office now! My head has never whipped back and forth so fast in my entire life as they both talked at the same time. TD beat red and TL wringing her hands in frustration. Shut the door, TL said. And then I could barely understand what was being said, but eventually figured out that it was about the transaction and check that I'd written prior. Yep, we, and I say we very loosely, handed over close to $100,000 to the wrong person. They handed me a record of everything that was currently happening because of that transaction. The commissioner's memo, the judge's orders, the investigation procedures, the assigned case number and detectives, the names of the bank representatives. I was told that there was an ongoing investigation and I'd be contacted by the bank and detectives shortly. And lastly, that I might be fired. What do you have to say for yourself? TD asked forcefully while slapping the top of his desk. To which I replied, I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was told to do. Don't you remember signing off on it all? I said matter-of-factly. They both spluttered something to the effect of, I would never. I have an MBA, and I've been doing this for 30 years. No, this is your mistake. This is not going to end well for you, etc. I almost burst out laughing because it very much sounded like the teacher from the Charlie Brown cartoons. You know, wah, 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 wah. But I was in no way worried. I calmly got up out of the chair that I'd been perched on the edge of, excused myself, walked to my office, picked up my purse and got my desk key out, opened the drawer, and pulled out the folder that I had made of that one particular transaction. I had purposely kept it separate from the other copies, just in case those papers somehow magically disappeared. Since TL was commonly and routinely famous for going through our desks, I walked back to TD's office and sat the folder on his desk in front of him and waited. What's this? TD asked me. Just open it, I said. He spent more time going through those papers than he had when he should have been paying a heck of a lot more attention 3 weeks ago. He finally looked across his desk at me with wide eyes, and I just blinked back at him, not saying a word. TL asked, well, what is it? And so he hands her the file, but never takes his eyes off of me. I swear, in that moment, I could hear her gulp loudly. For me, it was an, oh, so you think that I'm going to take the fall for this one moment? No, nope, not today, not tomorrow, not next month, not ever. And then I waited some more. You could definitely hear a feather drop. The room had gotten so quiet. As I said, I did what I was supposed to do, just like you two told me. Anything else you need me to clear up? I asked. TD and TL couldn't speak. Neither could find their voices in the moment, so I just quietly left the office, shut the door behind me, and smiled all the way back to my office. What happened with the ongoing investigation, I'll never know. The subject was never brought up again. Heck, I did just what they both told me to do. They're the bosses, right? Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Flyrun. It says, so what happened to that folder you presented? TD and TL could have easily taken it from you right then. Or did you keep a copy to cover your butt and hand it over to the bank and or detectives? With such a big investigation, I'm surprised that they weren't fired or charged. I'm not sure that OP handled this one the same way that I would have. I think I would have held on to that paperwork, kept a copy at home away from where the ones that could disappear were, and I would have waited for that investigation to start and then produce the evidence right then and there to the detectives and the investigators that were going over everything. Why give all the evidence to the bosses before the investigations even started? That just means they can make it disappear and make themselves look better. And unfortunately, it sounds like that's what happened in this case, because OP says that they never heard anything about it ever again. I just feel like a big opportunity was wasted here, where the investigation could have just brought this down completely on both of the bosses in this case. This story comes to us from First Desponder. Was denied 2 days of paid PTO, so I took off a whole month. When I worked corrections, I requested for 2 weeks off. I had been there for years and accrued plenty of paid leave. It was given to me as I had done so months in advance for a personal event. The 2 weeks went by way too quick. I had specifically lined up my 2-week break to lead into my 2 days off at the beginning of the break and at the end, so I could maximize my time off. However, during my normal off days, a family emergency came up that was quite serious, so I asked for another 2 days off to handle my situation. I was told by my direct supervisor that there was no way she was approving that, because we were only allowed to use 84 hours of leave in one continuous block. Given our rotating written schedules and 12-hour shifts, this equaled 2 weeks. She ordered me to come in the next day, or I would receive a write-up. I didn't argue, because I knew she was correct. So I showed up that night and reported for my shift, and much to my surprise, my captain had called out sick, so a relief captain came in to fill her shift. I asked him to give me the next day off after my shift was over. He and I had a rapport given the number of years we've worked with each other previously, and so he looked at the schedule and my leave. He said, "You know you've got plenty of leave, right?" "Yes, I know. I just need some of it to handle my business tomorrow." "No, I mean you've got plenty of leave to take, and the roster is filled the next 2 weeks." "Yeah, I just got off a 2-week vacation." I stopped because he winked at me, and it finally clicked. We can only take up to 2 weeks off consecutively. Nothing says we can't take off 2 weeks, come in for, say, an hour, then go home and take off another 2 weeks. So I did, and he signed all the paperwork, stating it's not my shift, F that be. I handled my emergency literally the next day. It turned out to not be as serious as we thought, and then enjoyed another paid 2 weeks off from work. It was great. To add to the bliss, I reported back from work to find out that this captain was fired and replaced for some kind of negligence or something. It was a great month. OP clarified at the bottom, it says, "Edit, the captain I worked for was fired. The captain everyone liked, who gave me the PTO, stayed for a couple more years before retiring." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Underbelly. It says, "Jesus, only in America is using your earned, owed vacation time considered malicious compliance." OP responded and said, "What's even more shameful is how corrupt our correction system is. It's all just a business, and they don't care about the officers, the staff, or the inmates." What an awesome captain that was. Just rolls in there and says to OP, "Oh, you've got all this PTO? Well, you might as well take a whole month off." I really wasn't expecting the icing on the cake being that the other captain was let go by the time that OP came back. I mean, that was the best case scenario. OP got to spend a whole bunch more time with the great captain in charge, and I'm sure they got everything they wanted. This story comes to us from Red Martali. "You really want me to log time by the ticket?" I'm sure all of you reading this have to log their work time in one way or another, and I'm sure most of you don't agree with the granularity of said logging. So I work in IT. Many years ago, I was involved in a big project creating a new platform while maintaining the old one. So during the week, I would spend some time on support tickets. My role was more high level. I would never be the one to actually work on a ticket. At one point in time, there was a new support coordinator assigned to the client account. The number of tickets was rising, and the team couldn't keep up, threatening the new platform. The coordinator needed metrics on the team's performance, so he generated reports from the ticketing and the time logging systems, combined them, and started looking into improvements, until he came across my logs. The metrics told him I spent about 2 hours a week and edited a varying amount of tickets. This looks weird, and he couldn't bill the clients on tickets I worked on, so he asked me what was going on. I explained that I would look over the list of open tickets, bulk update where needed, and log my time with a remark, like classified tickets. Then I would move on to my other duties. He didn't like that, and told me to enter a time log for each separate ticket I work on. I asked him what the minimum time was that he wanted me to log, which turned out to be 15 minutes. Fast forward a few weeks of me spending an hour a day logging hours, and logging that task too, and creating virtual overtime of about an hour a day. Then the coordinator comes up to me with a request to go through and update the full backlog. I'm fine with that, and tell him I'm logging that as a generic task and not per ticket. He tells me no, it must be logged per ticket. So finally, the malicious compliance. I spent about 2 hours to go over the backlog and make sure everything is in order. Then I spend the rest of the day entering everything into the time logging system. Fun fact, I was the first to reach the system's limits, but found a workaround to log everything. That day, as logged in the time tracking software, I worked for more than 16 hours. The rest of the week, I took it easy, came in late, went home early, I was done for the week, and every hour I worked extra would be unpaid, right? When it came time for invoicing, the coordinator could not justify the huge amount of hours I logged on the account. My rate was twice that of a tech support. And finally, he allowed me to stop logging by the ticket. My productivity went up again, as did my mood. I did flag the potential problems and drop in productivity to the CTO and CEO, who I reported to directly, but they said to comply anyway. We did laugh about it afterwards and learned a lesson and how not to waste time. Thank you for reading my story. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Dynamite Disco Dave. It says, sometimes Manglement needs to actually sit and think and actually research before opening their pie hole, but well done. I sincerely hope that when OP was logging the hours for those tickets, for each one of them, there was a note that said, logging 15 minutes as per the request of supervisor such and such. That way, OP could completely cover their butt. Now, one thing we've learned from a lot of these malicious compliance stories in the past is that you always should get things in writing. So the only other thing I would have done differently here is I would have requested from the supervisor that they send me an email confirming that they want me to put in 15 minutes for each one of the tickets that I worked on. That way, I'd have something to go back on if they ever came to me and said, hey, you can't be booking all these hours, you didn't do that much work. Did you know that every KCC video is also produced in podcast form? You can search for Karma Comment Chameleon on every major podcasting platform. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.